people think it doesn't matter, but the reality is, and I think we've probably both seen this through our career, is that the hardest thing to keep people on track for is the basics. When you're in logistics and you have that operational component, you will always have a capacity. Someone's will be different than someone else's because of the way that they've built, but everybody has a capacity constraint and limit.
Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting podcast, Ecom Lab. Here today with someone that you've probably seen, heard about, talked to, listened to on LinkedIn, or maybe even hire and work with them out in industry. I'm here with John McClymont, and we're excited to have you here today, John.
Thanks.
We'll kick this off by tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to.
Yeah, well, a little bit about me. So I've been in logistics and supply chain for 20 years. It's crazy when you think about it. Started right on the, as a day-to-day supervisor, worked my way up to national director, worked in some pretty large organizations and some smaller ones. These days, though, I spend my time working with a bunch of different companies in the retail or e-commerce space, helping them get more from their operations and to improve their customer experience, I guess probably is the easiest way to say that.
Yeah, so full range of services and ideas. I know you've got some really great opinions on any number of topics in supply chain. Today, we're hoping to focus on a little bit today about the future of e-commerce, where it's going, how we leverage technology, but more importantly as well, how do we leverage assets? How do we use what we've learned in the last 20 some odd years in industry around what it takes to really deliver on a customer promise. One of the things I love that you say, John, is disrupting the status quo, right? So here at Ecom, we're super passionate about innovation. And 9 times out of 10, when you speak about innovation, it means being tech forward or tech led. And we certainly have no shortage of ideas and things we're doing on the technology side, but we also believe that being innovative and disrupting it takes more than technology sometimes. How do you begin to see that?
Yeah, I think I would agree overall, right? Before anyone thinks that I'm anti-tech, that's obviously not true. I use all kinds of stuff all the time, right? Very, very delighted at this point in my career. Go back 20 years with all the tech, it would be amazing. But that being said, I think the truest statement that anyone could say is that no matter how good your technology is, you're not really going to take a bad operator and make them great. And that, I think, is just fundamentally important to understand, is that great e-commerce, great commerce in general, really does have a huge component that's about how you execute and how you get it done. And it's even more important in e-commerce just because of the fact that very often some of that last bit of the fulfillment, from the warehouse through the delivery, is really the only physical interaction a consumer, an end-of-line customer, has with a brand. So it's even more important these days than maybe it used to be in the past.
Yeah, it's all about that customer experience, right? At the end of the day, and that experience being, I click buy, but it has to get to my door, and I need to be brand centric, right? I need to do it on my merchant's terms, at least as a provider. From an e-com standpoint, we're a 3PL. We're all about our customers. We know today that as we map out our future and the things that we're working on and refining and removing bottlenecks, tech has definitely put a dent in efficiency gains, but we can never lose sight of the physical execution. And I think that's where every time we implement a new system, we bring on a new vendor, or we explore new ways of work, we're always coming back to, but we're missing the physical. What location? Is it a driver? Is he mobile? Is it at the pack station? What is happening both physically and digitally are conversations that we always continue to have. And they're always about, how do we make the digital and the physical align to an outcome, a result that matters for the merchant or the consumer? So it's a little complex, but to move back throughout the journey here of how we've built e-commerce the last 20 years, right? We've at the beginning had to rely on just technology to create e-commerce. To sell things online was a massive hurdle. And then slowly that technology got really, really good. then it moved itself into the supply chain and how can we execute better because of technology. I think today it's increasingly complex, even though we've come through this big journey. But I think the complexity now is more physical and more people-centric than ever before.
Yeah, I would agree with you, right? Because I mean, it's not just that we had to build for, it wasn't just building and using tech to build for e-commerce. It almost got bolted on, right? If you really go back and you understand just core logistics and sort of traditional operations, right? You had big batch manufacturing, you had big bulk shipments going into fewer locations, lots of items, lots of pieces. And items would get then to consumers through stores and through typical channels, and they would move in pretty decent velocities. And because of the fact that certain people dominated a region or dominated a product type or whatever, they would have a lot of sales. Well, these days, all of that still happens, but there are no more barriers. Everybody's the store. Everybody has a product, right? You can get anything from anywhere at any time. And that's really where, that build of technology to enable that was 100% necessary. But now you also have to, remember the fact that you're shipping maybe 1 million SKUs when you shipped 100,000, or you're shipping 5 million SKUs where you used to ship 50,000, right? Like there's a dramatic change in activity.
I mean, to bring it back to what we do here every day at Ecom, for example, some of the projects we're working on right now, when you have 200 merchants in a single warehouse, when you deliver for hundreds of different merchants on a daily basis, where you're commingling, where you're creating execution processes at scale for 200 customers in a box, eking out the pennies and the dollars can be quite the challenge. And we're really excited about what AI can do for us. We're really excited about continuing our journey on machine learning and other great technologies. But physically, inside the warehouse, it's becoming more and more difficult, is what we're seeing. We're really seeing that, commerce is being driven by the small merchant, the SMB community. And at scale, this is representing, you got a lot of little customers where, to your point, I mean, there's certainly some big 3PLs in the world that have the large dedicated warehouses. Our focus is more around shared use, as you know. But we could have 2 pallets, 20 pallets of single customer assortments with hundreds of SKUs at a very low quantity. Meaning, the way we touch it, when we touch it, how we do it, how we execute the SOP is super fundamental to getting the quality out the door. And to make matters worse, everybody wants it faster. And everybody wants it flawless. So that's some of the challenges that we're facing in the warehouse side. And on the delivery side, timing the execution for small parcel, local, same day, picking up, dropping off, sorting across hundreds of merchants. Again, I'm trying to illustrate and love to hear your thoughts on it. It used to be you service one and you get that job done. Now we're forced to service hundreds at a time, processes that may or may not be consistent, technologies that may be really widely dispersed, right? We can have any number of different tech things happening at the same time. And so bringing that back to execution on both the fulfillment and the delivery, super complex is what we're seeing today.
Yeah, big time. And I think probably the best frame for technology is that, technology should be seen as an enhancer, not necessarily a replacement, right? Like if a brand really wants to be successful, you don't want to be a brand that walks into some service provider and they're just hoping that their app gives them enough of an answer, right? Like if you and I are sitting across from someone and they're like, hey, here's our sales. Right. So this is what we sell every month or every year or whatever. And we're thinking of putting it in 12 different warehouses. Be like, whoa, you're going to kill yourself. You'll be bankrupt before you ever make a sale, just so that you can say that you're all over the country. So I think that you still have to have a lot of intentionality, a lot of purposeful design in your systems to get that right kind of execution, right? So that you can actually say with confidence, yes, you can promise that because I'm promising it to you. And I think that that's something that doesn't come up enough, when people are thinking about supply chain, is that it's a trust circle. It really is, right? Like, and it all is made or broken when the trust is broken with the customer And that has a lot of different places where that can happen.
Yeah, it's great. Intentionality, right?
Mm.
Focused design on the problem at hand. We spend a lot of time with our merchants talking about, what is important? How do you weigh the trade-offs between cost, quality, and speed if there needs to be a trade-off? In our warehouse, we love to think of it as one size fits all, but it never is one size fits all. We love the vision and the utopia of supply chain is simple, right?
For sure.
I often say we just move boxes. Well, from merchant to merchant, category to category, weights, dims, measure, handling characteristics, and what's most important, what does the customer value from that relationship is really where we see less and less complexity and more tailored requirements.
Well, yeah, and to your point, right? Every person wants their solution. They want a complete solution. They want everything that they're kind of expecting, but then there's all of these other challenges that are coming up, right? Despite the fact that I think that there's more knowledge, more talent, more technology in supply chain than ever, e-commerce and the way that it's diversifying between like what I like to call like sort of transactional and experiential type purchases or emotional type purchases, maybe if people want to think about it that way, it's actually continuing to get more complicated. The idea is simple, and this is the one thing that I think does so many people a disservice, is that they think that because the concepts of operations are easy, I understand the idea of having an inventory, picking it, packing it, shipping it, delivering it, whatever way you want to frame it. Because those ideas are simple, people just assume that there should be almost no error and that it should just happen flawlessly every time. But what do you have happening, right? You have all kinds of pressure now on an international market. You have speed and wildly varying service levels that are out there. You have returns that are pouring in like crazy. And now what's starting to come up more and more is capacity. Like we went from a point where capacity was always an issue in a B2B space, right? That's, trailers, how much gets on a trailer, to a lot of e-commerce being like, I'll never be able to fill a truck. But now you're getting into this concept, and I say that at a parcel level, you can definitely fill it in aggregate, but now you're getting into this thing of capacity and like, I actually don't have enough time.
Right.
Like I can't do that much. So it's like, that's how much more complicated it's getting. And it's not the easiest to balance, especially to your point, when you've got, some 50, 100, 200, 500 different customers that are all leaning on you to make their business.
And that's the thing, like we see tech bridging a lot of these problems we're facing today, which is super, a huge benefit. We could have never done what we're doing today in shared warehousing without some really great tech.
Right, for sure.
But to your point, you start layering on international shipments. For us, that's increasing day over day all the time. It seems like merchants want to explore the globe. They need to go farther.
Well, they need to, for sure.
They need to, right?
Yeah.
So adding more and more shipping lanes, more and more sortation process, more and more complexities around how to go cross border and other things like that. Returns, you brought up returns. Wow. We used to never be able to know what's in that return until we open it, process it, and it usually very manual by one person. Today, we know exactly what's coming at us. We're picking it up from the customer's doorstep in some instances, and really faster than ever turning that back into sellable inventory because of technology, right?
For sure.
And then you brought up capacity planning and peak, and you surge from 50 people to 200 people working in an environment. How do you begin to train on these very specific SOPs, very specific systems, very specific end user requirements that must be adhered to? So we talk a lot about error proofing the process, and technology at its best definitely helps us to error proof. But more and more, our engineers, as they build out the warehouse and they build out shipping solutions, are now required to not only be people and process experts, but be technology-enabled thinkers, where they need to be able to see data and information flow as much as they can see process and physical flow. And that's where we're exploring some wonderful ideas in that alignment. But I would say today our biggest challenge is not tech. It's how do you transform people, how do you train them, and how do you map out the physical side of the business?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even look at some of the sort of the assetless platforms, right? Probably one of their big claim to fame is that like, oh, we have unlimited capacity. It's
Right.
like, okay, like, I mean, I love it. It's so much of what you see these days. I relate to like this book from the 50s from Huff, where it's like how to lie with statistics. It's like, well, that's true and not true, in the sense that, like, yeah, in certain circumstances, you could say that because I could call on potentially a huge number of people, I have unlimited capacity.
Right.
But, well, what about the amount of inbound that you can do at your facility? What about the amount of sortation that you can do about your facility? Every facility only has so many doors. You
Right.
can only do so many people per hour through those doors. So at some point, everybody has a capacity constraint.
Yeah.
And that's something that I share all the time, right? Amazon has a capacity constraint. UPS, Pure Later. Well, funny enough, we're actually seeing some of that with these guys with the Canada Post strike. Like they kind of admitted, like, hey, you can't really take that on despite billions of dollars of infrastructure.
Right.
And then that's not a failure by them. But the reality is, when you're in logistics and you have that operational component, you will always have a capacity.
Yeah.
Someone's will be different than someone else's because of the way that they built, but everybody has a capacity constraint and limit.
Great term, right? I
Yeah.
didn't come up with this term. I think it was Amazon deserves all the credit yet again. But they often talk about mechanical capacity. What is my mechanical capacity dictates my productivity, dictates my
Yeah.
flow through capacity. And yeah, absolutely, we see that every single day. And when we talk about different seasons and the mechanical capacity changing in those systems, for example, we're in peak right now. And very clearly, when you bring on a lot of new employees in a warehouse, a lot of new drivers to your network, the mechanical capacity goes down. They're learning, they're making more errors. You have to adjust, you have to refine, you have to get back into training again. So, yeah, great point on the mechanical capacity driving out the end result.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things that, because it's not as fun to talk about, people think it doesn't matter. But the reality is, and I think we've probably both seen this through our career, is that the hardest thing to keep people on track for is the basics.
Yeah.
It's like everyone likes the shiny
The
things
fundamentals.
And yeah, the fundamentals. They're so wildly important, but we love to talk about all the things that get people to, sort of,
Yeah.
they're surprised and they're wowed and whatever. And those are great. But those things, more often than not, will never make up for just gaps in the basics. And that's why it's so important, because I'm sure that you guys must see this all the time. As commerce is changing, and you said this to me, so this is Chris, this is not me. Chris said this to me earlier, which I loved the frame, is that, commerce is shifting so much and moving away from just, those, well, no, I shouldn't say moving away, but becoming more diverse than just the big nationals or whatever, and that smaller merchants are playing a greater role than they ever have before.
Huge.
So, like, what do you have to do to help them get that level of experience, to have the right type of partners, to understand who they should be working with and why? Because, you're going to be inundated if you just take everyone's feedback and whatever. Like, it really is just so important, if you want to have success in your business, not only have a great product and not only have a great way to communicate with your customers and stuff like that, but to also have the right type of backbone to actually make it all happen when it needs to happen.
Right. So this may be a difficult question, but I'll throw it out there. What do you think that backbone needs to be today? Like, what do you think when you think about the top 1, 2, 3 things that are happening in e-commerce today? And I think about the level of execution that's required to win on behalf of a merchant, right? To satisfy consumers. We all know the benchmark. Benchmark's clearly Amazon. They do it very well at scale. What are some of your thoughts for a young, growing 3PL like us, or anyone in the industry in e-commerce today? What are a couple of the things that really stand out that are must get right?
Well, first and foremost, I think you have to have a really strong grasp of your capability. And I say that not just in your systems, but it's kind of everything, right?
Yeah.
What's my capacity? What are the things that fit well into my system? What are the things that I know I can execute at a high level of performance, right? And I think that a lot of times it's such a competitive market. Everybody wants to say yes to everything. But the reality is, and you'll probably find this, that the most strategic decisions anyone's ever going to make is probably more what you say no to than what you say yes to. So I think that that's always really important, because you don't really get a second chance to do right by that merchant.
Right.
So the better you can do there. And then I think the other big thing that goes hand in hand with that is how are you setting yourself up to evolve and change, right? The reality is we went through a very, let's call it like a slow-ish period, like you mentioned, 20 years just building a very sort of static system that was coming slowly. But now you're just getting so much rapid change. You're getting so much need for variability, for flexibility, for differentiation.
Yeah, it feels exponential, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just new things coming all the time, either in the form of partnerships or technology, but like just how merchants want to continue to refine their business. And so I like what you said in the first point as well, John. It's how do we put the pieces of the puzzle together? So yes, there's this mechanical capacity or capacity that we want to talk about, but how do you play that out day to day? Not all business is equal, and so for me, it's this bringing in a little bit of the quantitative financial. Right? What makes us money? We want to say yes to everything. We want to be, as a 3PL, the service provider that says yes, but it always comes at a cost. It always comes at some level of trade-off. And so as things evolve quicker and quicker, exponentially it feels like day after day, learning and endorsing new things, transformation, I see the same thing you're seeing, which I think there's not a mechanical capacity, there's a people capacity.
Yeah.
How can we evolve and keep people engaged in understanding the execution when we're evolving so quickly day to day? So yeah, just another layer, I guess, in the complexities of where we're going.
Yeah, for sure. No, very good. I mean, I think that there's probably never, there's never an end, right? And I think that that's the important thing, is just really appreciating the fact that, whether it's, service provider A or B or C, everyone's going to have their areas of strength. And the more that you try to do everything in every way, most likely you're probably not going to be that great at anything. So I think, having a strong grasp of what are the right things makes you stronger, makes your merchants stronger. And, there's a lot of partnerships, and there's a lot of different ways to structure the future, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think you absolutely nailed it. I think that's a great thing to close on, really. Is while there is a lot of change and there's a lot of complexity, remaining focused and intentional on where you add value, why you add value, and how you go about creating innovation, right? Because we've got to keep pace with change. We've got to keep moving forward. But I often see it. We lose focus. We lose why are we in business. We don't go back to exactly what's resonating because of the amount of change that's going on. So I think you're absolutely right. If you can see through it, you can remain focused. I think that's really where you can add even more value for your customers. So John, we've talked a lot about the changing landscape in supply chain, and we'd be remiss not to talk about sustainability.
We would, yeah.
Sustainability of in two ways in my mind. One, sustainability of the business model, scaling, moving 200 customers along through the journey as they grow and mature with us. So sustainability and profitability and how the model works, but also obviously for the planet. At Ecom, we put our money where our mouth is. We think green and sustainable initiatives is the only way forward. What are some of the things you're hearing today from your customers?
Yeah, I would agree. First, and I'm going to give you kudos for the fact that you actually broke it out, right? I think it's great that everyone is focused on the planet and doing the right thing that way. But there's more to sustainability than just thinking of like the environment, right? And more importantly, there's more to being able to help the environment than maybe just one solution, right? Like I think it's going to take a lot of different approaches to help make an impact. So sustainability, look, it's clearly important. It's getting more important for everybody. I think that the struggle that so many people have is finding a way to incorporate it in a way that still makes sense and still allows the execution to happen the way that it is. I mean, the reality is it makes it very, very tough if all of a sudden it's like, hey, I want to be sustainable, I want to do the right thing, but it's going to cost me 5 times as much, or I can only do a fraction of what I could do another way, right? Because it puts a lot of pressure on the system. So I think definitely people are looking for the right type of solutions. But interestingly enough,
Mhm.
I think more and more you're starting to get people open to variations of sustainability. So is it finally time to slow down? Does it maybe make sense to not just have time-based triggers, but to have volume-based triggers? I'm only going to move something at a certain threshold or things like that.
Right.
More and more, you're starting to hear different brands and different retailers being open to it as the maturity of supply chain comes out. And it's like, if I can really guarantee you on Monday that I'll deliver that on Thursday, will you choose it if you get that level of certainty
Mhm.
and then help me, help you, and help the planet by getting more stuff into fewer assets?
Absolutely. I mean, I got two comments. I think one, sustainability is fundamentally based on long-term thinking,
Yes.
right? Like
Yeah.
every time we talk about sustainability in the business model and scaling it and or the environment, it always comes down to it's not going to happen today. It's a long-term commitment.
Right.
I think the other one, the other blinding obvious for me when we talk about sustainability is it's about asset optimization.
Mm-hmm.
The better operations, the more refined, the more optimal, the less impact, the less waste, the more sustainable. Obviously, we love driving our bright drops, we love driving EVs, but beyond that, just using all of your assets to their fullest is a huge impact on both the bottom line, the business model sustainability and the growth of that, but also the environment. And I think how you put this together is always the challenge, right? So I think through this discussion, one thing that I'm learning, and I'm sure you're seeing in industry, is that it's not just one thing.
Right.
It's everything in an interconnected system that creates the outcome that merchants need, and e-commerce deserves, and customers demand. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, every little bit counts, right? Like stack everything that matters, put it all together, and you're going to be better off for it, right? Every step in the right direction makes it that much stronger.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
Well, it was great chatting with you.
Yeah, always.
Great thinking about what we've come through and where we're going.
Yeah, no, it's crazy too. Even how small the world is, right? I mean, you and I, for example, we met on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Right. We didn't know each other before, and here you are years later. Everyone's doing all kinds of crazy new things. So you just never know how the market's going to go and how any opportunity goes, which I think is great.
It's about community, right?
Yeah.
It's about community. It's about staying connected. We're here at Ecom Lab doing that just for you, for us, speaking to these microphones and hopefully adding some value of connections that you have. Put out your comments. Speak to us on LinkedIn. Speak to us online. We'd love to continue the chat. We'd love to hear from you. I'm sure there's so many ideas bouncing around from our conversation today. Shoot us a DM. Leave a comment, like I say, and we look forward to seeing you next time.